Okay, thank you for joining everyone. I will start the webinar now. I'll ask my panelist colleague Manu if he can hear me, just to make sure everyone can hear me. Manu, can you hear me?
Yes, Bertrand, all good, my side.
Okay, perfect. So let's get started. Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for this webinar with the TopLineLab and Trifacta, where we will be discussing pricing optimization, modernization, and best practices on the Google Cloud. We'll have a particular focus on the role of data preparation in the acquisition and normalization of data in hydrating the data model for pricing optimization. Moving the slide at the same time. Here we go. While we will be taking a pricing optimization angle to this webinar, the best practices you will learn here can be leveraged for any other initiative where you need to onboard data for your analytics. I am Bertrand Cariou. I'm product marketing manager for Cloud Data Prep and with Trifacta for the last 5 years. I have quite a long background working on the analytics space as a practitioner and with software vendors. I am delighted today to be joined by Manu Carricano. Manu is the founder of the TopLineLab and the director of the Institute of Data-Driven Decisions at ISADE Business School in Spain. Manu has been working at the intersection of data science and pricing optimization for almost 20 years. I'm really proud and delighted, Manu, to have you today. Welcome, Manu.
Thank you very much, Bertrand. It's a real pleasure on my side. We have a very long-standing relationship with Trifacta that started in my case in the academic world more than 5 years ago, if I remember. I'm really a big fan of the solution, and everybody will be able to understand why in this webinar.
Okay. Thank you. So before we start, we drill into the details. Quick housekeeping items. So you should find a Q&A section on the webinar, and you can ask questions during the webinar. We'll monitor the questions, and at the end of the session, we'll take the questions, and we'll try to leave plenty of time to respond to them. If we don't have the response, or if we don't have time, we'll follow up offline afterward. The deck and the recording will be shared, so don't ask this question and the Q&A. We'll be sending the deck, the recording, and even you'll get an opportunity to download a white paper on that subject. So what will we be covering today? The state of pricing optimization. So Manu, who has spent like more than 20 years on that subject, will talk about it. He will then follow up on explaining a concept about a common data model for pricing optimization and why it is critical to adapt it for this type of use cases. Then I'll be discussing the data acquisition part of pricing optimization, how to combine clean data for pricing optimization. And we'll go for an in-depth demo to show you how to structure clean the data using Cloud Data Prep. And also Manu will share some Tableau reports on top of it for analytics and what-if analysis. And after that, we'll get some Q&A. All good. So Manu, I think it's up to you. I'll go to the next slide, but it's up to you.
Thanks, Bertrand. So before we move, so a little bit of explanation about the pricing optimization. So I did, for instance, a paper a few years ago called Optimization, Pricing Best Kept Secret. Because the reality is that optimization is a word which is used all over the place and not necessarily for what it really means. So optimization is related to mathematical programming, or in data science, what we call prescriptive analytics. So, but to get there, you need to address models, business processes, and obviously data. So we will address this journey and it's important in the section of the webinar, the first part. So the first element to take into account is that pricing is one of the top use cases in data science. When it comes to money spent in data analytics, pricing is one of the top use cases. And why? Because after years of focusing on data architecture, on big data, on implementing or improving data warehouses, companies are right now full speed on business-oriented use cases with a focus on correcting inefficiencies and optimizing the processes. So after fraud analytics, which is one of the top use cases, pricing is one of the top of the list when it comes to the impact generated and hence on the ROI. But pricing is not easy. And on this logic, there is one concept we use a lot, which is the 1% mindset. Pricing is a very complex use cases. It's cross-functional. It involves a lot of data streams, but it's really worth the effort. So this 1% mindset comes with the beginning of pricing as a discipline. Almost 30 years ago, everything accelerated after two McKinsey consultants published a paper in Harvard Business Review. It was in 1992, around this 1% idea. And this idea captured a lot of C-level attention. So pricing started as a C-level topic. What is the best profit driver? In other words, what is the best OPEX investment? Is it cost? Is it volume? Is it price? If you increase your price by 1%, what impact do you expect on your operating profit? So I let you think about this 1% improvement. Think about the 1% impact on your operating profit in your own company. So why does pricing matter? In this study from 1992, which has been replicated dozens of times or even more, we found always an impact between 6%. So this example here is the lowest hand to a 11, 12, if I remember correctly. So what does it mean? Here we see that a 1% improvement, which means a 1% increase, leads to a 6% improvement in operating profit. And you have to compare efforts. The same effort in volume, for instance, leads to an increase of 2.1%. Okay, and the same effort in cost, in other words, cutting the cost or reducing the cost, leads to a 3.8 impact for variable cost. So it means that pricing is 3 times more powerful as a lever than volume. We think it's particularly important to consider, and particularly given the current context. We are living a demand crisis experiment, so the best answer and the most efficient one is not a cost cutting, it's a pricing scenario. So companies, in fact, what we observe and when we talk to companies, they are all running scenarios all the way to pivot and to rebound. And so it means that the question you can ask yourself is, how strong is your pricing use case in this scenario? Okay. And again, in this story, it's more than just pure operating profit. Pricing and revenue management as an investment, as a use case to be pushed by the top management of the company really pays off. So as an example, a few years ago, and that's something we still are working on, but we defined a model to let's say, showcase what we call the pricing power, so the capacity to increase price or to be more efficient through the process. What is the impact on EBITDA? So the model measure pricing power with 2 synthetic indicators that you see on the 2 axes on the right, which are extracted from financial statements. Company A, so the first one is price sensitivity. Company A increased the price and saw an impact on sales. And the second one is price to profit on the vertical axis. How the price change is translating into profit. In this example, you can see what happened during the last economic crisis, which is quite interesting. Firms with superior pricing power, so on the upper left corner on the right graph, so the green line, basically we can see that they had a superior value in terms of shareholder value, but also they rebounded more quickly in the post-crisis recovery period. So that's something that speaks to C-level, pricing has an impact on EBITDA and on shareholder value. So the complexity is that it's also a journey, okay? And corporate performance is a result, in fact, of this long and complex journey. Our model, our methodology, as you'll see later, focuses on the transformation of the pricing-related processes and scores maturity from an analytical perspective. Why? Because benchmarking your company with competition is nice, but spotting the internal bottlenecks is better. As these are related to business, processes, governance, and people, data and technology, all that matters. Okay, so you see here a company at the predictive level. So moving from descriptive to predictive is moving from silo data, slice and dice, transactional base to injecting models in the systems. Okay, in your approach to optimization, and it's model based. PepsiCo, for instance, segmentation is totally key, and PepsiCo did a lot of progress in the let's say the pivot of their pricing and revenue management function through segmentation in particular. Prescriptive is adding a little more of a forward-looking indicators, and P&G is a good example because they mix, for instance, data science with experiments, with behavioral economics, which is very strong. And excellence, that's really moving AI, the human and machine connection, having models with a feedback loop fed by humans, but also a kind of cross-company scale and very large-scale experiments. Amazon is known for its huge experimental capabilities and the hundreds of millions of dollars which are provisions in the accounts also to fail and to learn from these failures of experiments. So it's a kind of journey that moves progressively to the top.
So yeah, maybe we could. We've got a poll, in fact, to get an understanding where you stand. So let me open a first poll. You should all see a screen where you can respond to this question. So Manu just talked about the pricing maturity, and please respond. What is your own level? Where do you think your company stand? And so I'll give you a few seconds to respond. So we're seeing people still responding. I'll give more some time. It looks like there is like an outlier, definitively, and descriptive. Here we go. So I'll be ending the poll right now, and I can share the result with you all. So what you can see that the outlier is really descriptive. Manu, is it where you see companies today in pricing optimization, where they stand?
Absolutely. I think, in fact, that's a very good representation of what we observe, at least in Europe, because the most difficulty is this move from level 2 to level 3. And that's an error that a lot of companies do by running into installing a solution when the data or fundamentals in terms of process are not installed. So that's a very good representation of the reality.
Okay, so maybe I'll stop sharing the result and move to the next slide, where maybe you can talk a little bit more about your model and your approach to solve that. Okay, so that's why this analytical maturity applied to the pricing process works. It's because you have to, what I was saying is that you have to tackle progressively the inherent complexity of pricing. So moving to this goal, so excellence, maybe not, but just before, to go kind of business prescriptions that flow into the systems. So it means that process maturity is related, but also data and related architectures are totally central to scale along the journey. So very quickly here, it's all about optimizing sequentially the full process from HQ guidance to execution, and moving away from a highly siloed and manual process, everything separated, everything involving a lot of time-consuming repetitive tasks, to an automated and optimized one. So prescriptive is really
about automation and optimization, as you'll see later. So this is why modern data management brings a lot of value. We can use advanced models to manage complexity, to manage also certainty and efficiencies through the automation and optimization of the process, when it makes sense. So in other words, when the models outperform the humans. So just here, if we follow, just to give you a snapshot, in fact, moving in the superior levels of maturity is where the demand in terms of data is more challenging, in fact. So here, moving to the predictive level means to focusing mainly on the main chain between targets and guidance on one hand, and on the strategic and setting levels. What confidence do I have in my business forecast? What do I know about the patterns and the meaningful relationships that guide decision making? So at the end, you start by relating guidance to the decisions that need to be pushed into the systems in terms of segmentation, in terms of value, in terms of discount efficiency, for instance, and promo. And for instance, promo, if we isolate this block, will be particularly relevant today in this context where we expect to have a rebound on demand at some point and a big fight on market share. So then moving to the prescriptive level, to level 4, that's where the company partially moves towards automation and optimization. Can we connect multiple objectives and constraints to the optimal course of action and to the shortest path to this course of action? And as you see, the need in terms of data continuously evolve along the way. So if we want to enable this level, we need to have more granular, more accurate, more actionable data along all these kind of sources of information we need to integrate. So Bertrand is going to take over now and explain how we can simplify the data acquisition process for pricing.
Thanks, Manu. Yeah, in this section, I'll drill a little bit more in the details, really on the acquisition part of the data. So we decided for this webinar to really focus on one cloud platform, that is the Google Cloud. However, if you're in your cloud journey with Amazon, Azure, or any other cloud, that's a good thing. The reason being that cloud really helps you in removing your dependencies from hardware, and in many cases, software installation to really focus on the business case. So it's really an accelerator, and it's what Manu and the TopLineLab have been also doing a lot, is helping companies in implementing solution in the cloud. So that is particularly true with the Google Cloud Analytics that provide an end-to-end serverless smart analytics suite that covers everything from bringing the data into the cloud, then preparing the data so it's ready in the data warehouse for reporting, analytics, and machine learning predictive initiatives. This is pretty much a plug and play, and all the services are auto-provisioned and pretty scalable. To illustrate it today, we'll show some of it, but also we'll show you that you can also leverage your existing investments. So typically here, we'll show some reports in Tableau, so you can see reports, but also what if and simulation analytics. By adapting a cloud solution, you'll be able to engage in a self-service analytic journey, and it will be easier, I would say, to focus on really on the business side of things. There's a lot on that slide. What we'll be covering today is the center part, that is how to prepare the data for BigQuery and then report on top of it. So I'll be focusing on Cloud Data Prep. Many of you may be users of Cloud Data Prep already, but Cloud Data Prep is an approach at the heart of any analytic initiative or ML initiative to convert raw and disparate data into refined assets for your analytics. So Trifacta offers a solution on the Google Cloud, but also on Amazon, on Azure, or on-premise. But anyway, whatever the solution you have, the user experience is exactly the same. it's as a data analyst, data engineer, or data scientist, or any business-driven data professional, you don't want to spend time writing complex code or manually manipulate data in a spreadsheet, or even leverage multiple tools to clean and structure your data. So it's where Cloud Data Prep helps you to accelerate this critical data preparation process using a simple and easy user interface. As you'll see in the demo, the user experience is quite unique. It starts with the data. The user can discover what the data is at hand, start then structuring, cleaning, enriching the data, and validating the data in one single user experience, to then load the data, automate all the structuration of the data into a database. In that case, we've been using BigQuery. And usually the feedback that we get is that it's 5 to 10 times faster than any existing approach. So in fact, I'll open maybe for a second polling question to understand where your company stands in terms of your analytics cloud journey. So I'll launch the poll. And here the question is, where are you in your analytics cloud journey? Where do you stand today? Are you still on premise, or are you already in the cloud? Where do you stand? I'll give you some more time to respond. Again, and I'll show you the result at the end, but I can already see I've got insider information, and we've got some outliers there. Thank you. I end the poll. 1, 2, 3. Ending the poll, and now sharing the result with everyone. Again, I think there's like no amazing news here. We see that, and it was like reporting by many analyst firms, that half of the analytic projects are moving to the cloud now. So there is a good reason for that I explained. And we see that you are on track with what the market says. Thank you for sharing your own journey with us. So I'll stop sharing. And what I'll do next is really move into a demo. And for that demo, we simplify the overall process, but we'll go for each of the steps of building a common data model in BigQuery so we can do proper pricing analytics. For that demo, I'll be leveraging some source data in CSV file, Excel files. But in your own use case, I'm sure you have transactional system you need to connect to. I'll be showing then Cloud Data Prep in how we combine the data set, normalize the data set to load into BigQuery. So, and then Manu will show you how to report on that data. So let me share my screen for the demo. Here we are in Cloud Data Prep, and we'll be building this flow. So this data prep flow is aimed to support the construction of a database that meets the standards to extract pricing insight. We call it the common data model. And in that particular case, it is some existing tables in BigQuery that we will need to map the flow to. We will curate and integrate all the distributed sources of data, starting by combining the transactions data coming from Excel in that particular case, and we'll append with a union all these data set together. Then we will join that data set with the pricing data. All along the way, I will show you how we can clean and enrich the data so it fits the common data model. The data here is a simulation of transactional data similar to what we often see with our customers. So the data exists in the organization, but it is raw, not consolidated, or not arranged in a productive form for pricing, modeling, and optimization. And the goal is really to clean up that data. So this is the final state we want to get. However, we'll start with the beginning. Like here, already connected to my data sources. I could add other data sets. directly from BigQuery, Google Sheets, cloud storage. But based on the edition you have, you can also connect to Oracle, SQL Server, IBM DB2, or Salesforce, for example. So data has been already imported. Here, I can then look at the transaction data and add a new recipe. So I can start combining all the transactions together. So the first thing I'll be doing, or maybe before I union, just a quick overview. So I opened the data set and I've got some extra information here in terms of column headers. For example, here I can see that this column has been inferred to be a date, that most of the data is valid. However, we can see that there is mismatch value. I have also value distribution for the columns. So these are signals to help me clean the data, and we'll clean the date later on. So first thing that I need to do is union of the three transactional files. So I'll click the union tool and I'll define the two data set I want to union. What Cloud Data Prep is doing now is analyzing the data and figure out how to best map the three data set together. In that case, I've got data set that are pretty similar. In fact, that are totally similar. I can see that in my first transaction file, the fiscal date, I've got some sample values, and I can just verify that the map of the columns is correct, and it is correct. So I'm adding that to the recipe. I did my step one. I combine my three transaction data together using the union tool. The next thing I have to work on is, I was mentioning previously, I need to clean up the fiscal date. So if I click on the fiscal date, you'll see that I've got additional statistics here, especially that I can see a value distribution. I've got some dates with the value error. I need to clean that up. I can also see some patterns. So let's click the column details to really zoom into these information. The first thing I'll be doing is clicking error, and you'll see that Cloud Data Prep is suggesting me to transform the data, maybe keep only data with error, or in that case, I want to remove that data because I can't do anything out of that this transaction without date. That will screw up my analytics. So let's delete all the rows with errors. So it's been removed, but I still have some mismatch values. And it looks like the mismatch values are based on the format, the pattern that is not correct. So I can go to the pattern tab, and here I see all the patterns that exist in my data sets, especially like date, month, as text and year. And what I want to do is to convert all the data set into that format that is the most prominent format. And Cloud Data Prep suggests me, in fact, to convert all the other format into the valid format. So I like that suggestion, and then adding it to the recipe. The recipe is a set of transformations that are applied to the data. So you see that it's recorded, and every time I want to replay the recipe, every time I'll be receiving the same data, I can reapply exactly the same rules. So I've got always accurate and consistent data at the end of my pipeline. Here you see now that I don't have any more errors with my date. Let's look at other columns. We could apply some standardization and cleaning. Typical column where you may have some data issue is like customer names, product names, categories, and we want to standardize them. So I can leverage the standardize tool here, and I can define on that column some standards. A way to do it is to do it by pronunciation. So let me select pronunciation. And here you see that Cloud Data Prep grouped the data in similar values. I've got multiple ways to transform the data here. One of them being defining manually the value that I want. in that case, this H and J incorporation, apply. And every time Cloud Data Prep will see one of these values, it will automatically convert into this one. Another way to do it is selecting the column and look at value first, applying that value. So I can do that again and again for each of the groups. Let's assume I've done that for all of them and add it to the recipe. So now I've got customer description that is clean. Here I've got key account manager. I may want to do my analytics per sales reps. So if I'm missing some sales rep here, I've got some missing, that will not work. So again, I can click missing value. I've got a suggestion and I delete that these values, and you can see my recipe is building up. Let's look at over here. We've got the SKU, so the product ID, and we've got the structure, the category it belongs to. Here I've got some value with pound. Another way to clean data is to select some data into the cell and get some suggestion based on the selection. Here I want to remove the pound sign, and then I add it as replacing by an empty string. I think I'm pretty good now with my transaction data. I could go over and over, but let's move now to pricing. So let's go back to the flow. As you can see, the flow has started building where the three transaction files have been combined together. Now let's focus on the product. Let's add a new recipe. So same way, edit the recipe. Cloud Data Prep will open that data set with similar information as we had previously. And we can see here that maybe it was provided, this file was a report that gives me 3 columns with the pricing for January, February, March, and pricing could evolve month by month. So what I want to do is to create an average price. But how to do that? To start with, I will have to unpivot the data. So here I've got 3 columns. I want to unpivot these 3 columns into 3 rows. How can I do that? In fact, that's pretty easy. I can select these 3 columns and leverage one suggestion. And here I've got one at the end, that is the unpivot. So let's select unpivot, and I can see in the bottom of my table what it will look like. So as you can see, product, client, here, these 2 empty columns that I will delete later. But here you can see January, February, March, January, February, March. So it's been pivoted from column to rows. Let me add that to my recipe. The next thing I can do is here I've got the year and the month. And I need to have to make a clean column date. So what I can start is first combining the 2 columns. Oh, I don't need these 2. So I can combine these 2 columns. Let me see if I've got a merge. Yeah, I've got merge year, month, and year. Let's take this one to start with. So now I created a new column, as you can see, that has the month and the year. From that column, I need to create a well-formatted date, like 1st of January 2020. So a way to do it is to leverage another tool that is pretty useful in that case, that is create a column from an example. So I selected my column here, and I can provide an example. I want to change that into 1/1/2020. And here you can see that automatically Cloud Data Prep looked at, okay, it's January. Here seems to be February, so it's month number 2. And that is an easy way to create a new column. And I'll call it, in that case, price date. And I'll add it to the recipe. Look at that. I've got now a new column that is pretty clean. Next thing that I want to do is calculate the average. And to do so, I can select the various column I'm interested in. So I want to calculate the average by product code, client number, by price date, and here select the value. The usual, I've got suggestion, create a new column, or I've got a group by. So I can select the group by, one of the suggestions, and edit it. The default suggestion is create a count and a sum. I don't care about that. I'll do average, and average if, because you've seen that I've got many values that are empty. So I'll do an average only on the values that are bigger than 0. Here I can see what it will look like. I don't need the sum. Looks good. Add it to my recipe. And maybe I'll do also maybe a round. So you can create some calculation here, round, and I round the numbers with 2 digits after the separation. Here we go. Add it to the recipe. So I've got, as you can see now, a new table, product code, client number, price date, and the average price for that particular month. I've got some null values. Maybe let's delete all the null values. There we go. And I will also rename that column into, that is the list price converge. Add it. Now I've got my pricing that is clean, my transactions that are clean. I need to combine them both. So I will be using the join tool. I can browse my current flow. I'm currently on that data set and I want to join it with transaction. Accept. What data prep is doing behind the scene is figuring out the best columns to match. Here, it inferred that I could join on these 2 columns, but it looks like it's not the best match because I've got no match. So I can edit the suggestion and join the product code with the SKU. Add another join key. That will be, the second join will be the pricing date with the fiscal date that I created. So now I'm joining the 2 data sets together. And I'll select all the columns that I want in the final data set, knowing that fiscal date and pricing date and SKU are the same. I don't need both. So I'm keeping, let's say, like this one from a product code and price date. Review, add to the recipe. And here we are now. All the steps are recorded. I can see that I've got my data set valid here. It's really where I want to go. Maybe there's an extra step here to do. As I mentioned initially, I've got a BigQuery table that has already the common data model that is defined. So what I can do is map the recipe to an existing target table. So I'll select in BigQuery my table. So I've got pricing CDM, pricing optimization common data model in BigQuery. So that is an existing table that I want to map my recipe to. So what Cloud Data Prep is doing here is showing me the data that already exists in the table, and I want to map the data from my existing data set. And Cloud Data Prep is trying to match by similarities the columns. In that case, the product name are pretty similar. So I've got a suggestion, but it's not mapping very well. So I need to do it manually. So this one is the product code. And now I'm saying connect the product, this column to product ID. Price date, let me do the same. And then I can do it for each of the column. It will be a little bit long in the demo. So I already done that previously in the initial flow for the demo. So I'll go to that initial flow, the master, where it's already all clean and finalized. So I've got my flow, and this is all the design. I defined the rules to transform the data. Now I need to execute that flow. And to do so, I will create a job. And by clicking Run Job, I will define where I want to output the data. In that case, I already defined that I want to map it to the table into BigQuery. But otherwise, you can change, so you can see it here. I'm loading the data into BigQuery table called pricing CDM, and I can run the job. So running the job means that Cloud Data Prep now is taking all these data set and applying all the transformation and loading it into BigQuery. What I can do as well is schedule that flow. Maybe I receive this data every week, every month, so I can define the frequency for which I want to load the data. So for example, weekly on Mondays at 9 p.m. Save. And here I can see that the scheduling has been defined. The other thing that I can do here is also manage email notifications. For example, every time there is a failure, I want to be alerted. But also when it runs fine, I want to be alerted as well. So it will send me an email directly to let me know that the data has been loaded. Assuming the data has been loaded into the BigQuery table, the next step of the demo will be to show you the insight in Tableau. But for now, I'll stop on the data preparation side because we're done. So let's review all the steps we've been through. And I'll summarize all the steps we've been through. So we've done a lot in that demo. We appended multiple data sets coming from Excel to generate one single data set of similar transactional data. We went through assessing the data quality with some statistics we got on the dates or other columns and value distribution. We normalized the transactions date. We standardized company names using clusters and similarities in the name. We then removed invalid data, corrected some, and derived new values out of existing data. Remember, we got a file that was coming like a report with multiple months with the price evolving in months. So we unpivoting the data so it became rows. Then we did the other way around. We created a new column averaging these prices for each month based on the customer, the SKU, and the date. Finally, we combine all the data set together from the transaction plus the prices into this single common data model. And then we schedule the job to run that over and over. So you can really manage your entire data pipeline from the source data to BigQuery or whatever your database is. So then you can report on top of it. Manu, I will hand it over to you for showing some of the reports you created. So maybe you need to share your screen from now. So I'll stop sharing. Yeah, and if you can share.
Thank you. I'll share my screen and move to Tableau. You can see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Perfect. So just before we move, I will do quickly this demo so we have time for Q&A as well. So as you saw, the common data model is totally central, and the common data model is domain driven. it means that we need to inject domain knowledge about what to do in the common data model. And also, the CDM needs to anticipate future scaling. We need to anticipate that maybe at a later stage, we need a better matching for competitive data, for instance. We need maybe to have a better vision of the value attributes of the product and so on. Okay. Also, we see a series of operations which are not trivial for pricing. The price date that Bertrand showed is complex because we need to be sure that the list price we have or the price we have are the price that were active at the moment of the transaction. And many other elements, same for the promotion, for instance, the period of promotion, if you want to calculate baselines and uplift are totally central and so on. So here, very simple. We see one type of insight, which is a pricing waterfall, which is a description of the impact of the commercial policy on margin. And the better is the more complete at the end. Having correctly assigned the discounts, the rebates, the promotions, the cost to serve the customer as well. So the logistic cost related to a customer, to a transaction, is something that takes time and it's part of the transformation. So here, for instance, we try to reproduce a scenario related to the crisis, for instance. You see some gross sales, 134 million, and a margin of 7.4, 53 margin. Let's just see how compare period by period, and you see that in fact the discounts change. We had a hit in terms of volume, so volume decreased a lot, 30% decrease, but you see that at the end, because we had a better control on the discounts and rebates, at the end the margin is increasing. So pricing is a lot about having some surgical actions and the control and the compliance on the first stages, and obviously after that, you need to go to a more deeper optimization. Right now in this scenario where volumes are hit by the crisis, pricing managers for C-level are also in the middle of multiple scenarios. What do we need to do, and what do we need to? Where is the best lift in terms of action? So here is what we call the impact estimation, simple what if analysis, that allows you to find a scope and to decide a series of action. So here we could go further and see that for this SKU story where we have, so this customer story where we have the higher discounts, we could decide on a series of action. So for instance, I could, cut my discount 3%, and you'd see based on this baseline, what is the expected impact that you can have. So I'm going to move my discounts, a 3% impact. I could also differentiate by discount, obviously, based on the efficiency of the same. Okay, having action on the rebates, just to do the same effort. So you see a little bit how the impact is gaining. So we have some impact on the discount side. The promo usually are where most of the inefficiencies lie. Okay, little by little, I'm thinking about generating my impact and documenting one specific and surgical action on one set of customer. But then I can also do a promo action to push volume and to see where, or to pass an increase of price on other scope, and to see how little by little my gain, my lift is increasing based on a series of connected actions. So obviously here I'm oversimplifying the logic, but you see that you can little by little deep dive into a specific case and generate for your management very documented cases as long as their impact. As you move from a descriptive logic to a prescriptive logic, obviously part of this recommendation come from the models. You would have a deeper segmentation. You would have a more accurate forecasting basis in the back end. You would have, for instance, also an optimization layer that would suggest the best and optimal discount, an optimal rebate, an optimal promotion, an optimal price. So let's keep it like that for the moment. Bertrand, I leave it to you as well to go back to the content.
Manu, I'll do it. Manu, can you? We'll move to the Q&A now. We've got questions here. Manu, can you share your slide on the Q&A? Because I can't see the Q&A at the same time that I'm sharing my screen. So if you can share your own screen with the Q&A as soon as you're in the slide deck.
Perfect.
That would be great. Thank you. So yeah, we have a few questions. So I'll start with one. With the current macroeconomic changes at a global level, does it make any sense to start a pricing optimization initiative?
Yes,
so
thanks
that's for you.
It's a good example. I will take it. So here there is a big pressure on cash and on costs in the response to the crisis, but we are living a demand crisis. What does it mean? It means that we need to tackle the recession period right now. So we need to control all the inefficiency we could have in the pricing process, plus in the promotion process. That's totally strategic here. So cutting the discount that you saw in the waterfall is central, but we also need to anticipate the rebound, the recovery period. When forecasts and when demand goes back and the company that detects early this rebound will have an advantage. The way companies are going to fight back for volume, it will be critical. So you need to protect basically your value by maintaining the price or covering the extra cost that you could have during the recession and the recovery. We see in retail, a lot of companies are not passing the increase they have in delivery, for instance. But you also need to be able to leverage volume by incentivizing demand with the right promotion, the right discount, and so on. So the surgical approach we mentioned is totally critical, but also, let's say, raising up your pricing skills with simulation capabilities, with forecasting will be totally central.
Okay, pretty clear. Thank you. I've got over question. I'll read through it. So someone is asking, and please, everyone, please ask your question. I see there are question in the chat, also in the QA. So I'll try to ask the question. So another question for you, Manu, is I am in SaaS, software as a service. So it's quite different from consumer. So I believe the question would be, is there major differences for pricing optimization in a SaaS model compared to consumer model?
Yes, it's very different, but pricing is still very important. The kind of granular knowledge you can have about usage of your software is going to command the changes you need to do in your new SaaS pricing model. So that's something we see very frequently. Companies try to rush in the definition of their good, better, best model for SaaS subscription model. They don't update necessarily the model with additional features that come in the roadmap of the product, the improvements, and they don't necessarily adjust the pricing model to changes in usage and behavior. So at the end, even if it's a SaaS model, you need to have a very detailed knowledge about your usage, so the customer transaction, the way they use features or don't use features to really rebuild your SaaS model. So it's less transactional, but at the end you need the transactional logic, the usage logic above all to adjust the model. Okay, and we see that in general, SaaS models are a little bit underpriced, and the impact on the on profitability of repricing your SaaS model is huge. You just have to look at Netflix repricing and the impact on the shareholder value that it led a few months ago. Okay, thank you. In fact, there's an extra question that is maybe similar, or you can extend. Is it limited to B2C, or how can you use your solution for B2B complex software sales? I think you covered it a bit, but if you want to add anything. I think it's exactly the same for B2B and B2C. The difference is, the difference can be in the data model. So B2C, you are much more connected to the last mile of information. So you can have a better knowledge about competitors' prices, for instance, market share, market trends. So the market data or domain data, by the way, which is detailed in the white paper we're going to publish, is very important, maybe less important in B2B, but in both worlds, you have a large complexity of the process. So pricing is very complex at the end. That's what makes it difficult to tackle, and that's where, in fact, data is critical, but also That's where models are going to support this complexity by digesting this complexity. So it addresses B2B and B2B2C. The data model can change at the end. It's much more granular, much more demand-oriented in B2C, or much more usage-driven in B2C, but the complexity is the same but at different levels.
So there are more technical questions, so maybe I'll take it. One question, please. How did you create the last simulation dashboard? Are all the calculations taking place in Tableau? And there's another question that I saw previously also about, oh, it looks very like Tableau. So I'll respond to these questions. So yes, first, all the reporting, and the what if analysis has been done with Tableau. And then it looks like data preparation looks like Tableau. In fact, Tableau has a product similar to Cloud Data Prep, but that is, I would say, pretty limited in terms of capabilities. Trifacta is like all over the place. You'll figure out that Trifacta is the leader in data preparation, and we see Microsoft, Tableau, and many others taking the same approach, but they're like 5 to 10 years behind Trifacta in terms of capabilities. Do you want to add anything, Manu, on the Tableau side? You build everything on Tableau, correct? On the reporting side and what if analysis.
Yes, Tableau, but at the end, the BI is not necessarily central. You can adjust the BI to different uses. What is very important for us is really to differentiate. So first you have the sources, and the cloud is an enabler of aggregating the sources, but the flow of building the common data model needs to be separated. You cannot think you have a tool which is valid for everything. So you need to readdress surgically or with quality this process. It's not only about the recipe that you saw, it's also about the maintenance. So when you go multiple countries in the model, when you have much more sources which are connected, it's really central to be able not only to streamline this process, which is very time consuming. We didn't mention it, but 80% of the time is on data prep. So you want to make the lives of the business users easy, basically, and avoid to have also your IT department, which is totally overlapped with increasing demands of more data, more insight, and so on. So it's very central to have this central piece, this expertise, which is encapsulated by the right tool in the middle. And then the output can be Tableau, Looker, whatever, and machine learning models as well. That's where, in fact, you have the connection between also the kind of analytical bricks that you can have and embed into your process. So
okay, thank you, Manu. Yeah, I need we have more questions, but I need to cut you, and sorry for that. We passed the hour. We'll follow up with everyone with the additional questions we couldn't respond. And thank you for asking. Hope that webinar was knowledgeable for everyone. You learned something in pricing optimization or in bringing your data into a common data model and how to clean up your data. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you Manu for co-presenting with me. That was extremely good presentation. Have a good day everyone, and we'll follow up with an email, and you'll get also the link to the white paper. Bye bye everyone.
Thank you everyone.